Welcome to Kumba Software DPAA videos. This video is about what's new in the DPAA new feature release dated March 8th of 2026. So be sure to set your video playback to high definition, and though some visual details of DPAA may have changed since this video was created, the functionality will be the same. So there are two new features we've introduced into DPAA in this release. The first has to do with snapshots. So one of the unsung heroes of DPAA, it's a feature that it turns out not many people use, but if you start using it, you're going to be very in love with it. And that's what happens is if you go do a snapshot, it will take a configuration backup of everything, every configuration object you have selected, but different than your normal backup where normally what you do is back up an entire service or an entire domain. The problem you run into, especially if you're using source code control, is the fact that it makes it very difficult to recover exactly one object or one file, or maybe a small selection of objects and files. The way Snapshot works is it creates individual output files for each object you actually export or back up with this option. And it's a minimal configuration file, which means it's very easy and quick to re-import if you do it. Now, prior to now, we had the snapshot feature when you just snapshot your appliances and domains in their entirety. We've added a new feature in this release where you can go and you can create snapshots of individual objects and files. And to give you an idea here is I can go in and say I can take this, let me take this first set of objects here, and notice that they don't even have to be from the same domain either. There's just coincidence of sorting. But they're two different object types of different names. And when you select the hamburger minion, or you select the right mouse click after you've made a selection of objects, you now have the ability to create a snapshot right now. So what happens is it's a little bit more involved than what you might think. I'm going to go ahead and select the option. And we're going to get a snapshot not just of the objects we selected, but it will snapshot all the objects underneath them. So you can see that we have the crypto profile that we're getting, but we're also getting a public key export, a cert export, and some other things. So whenever a snapshot is made of an object, it takes it from the top level and snapshots everything it can down that hierarchical tree of objects that you have in that tree or in that selection. You can also do this with files. So if I go in here and I select, a set of files here, and I'll just, again, select an arbitrary number of files, I can right mouse click, or I can use a hamburger menu, and I can select create a snapshot. And so now I've created a snapshot of all of these individual files. So instead of snapshotting necessarily everything, you're creating a Adobe export of just that snapshot of just that thing. To give you an idea of how valuable this can be, I'm going to go take these 4 files and I'm just going to modify them real quickly just to prove that this works. And I'm going to pull this up. And I'm going to go into these files, and I don't know if you've ever seen our file editor, but it's a syntax highlighting editor where you can do synchronized edits. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the entry here, and I'm going to just type a bunch of gibberish. And of course, the way the synchronized editor works, all 4 of those files now had been modified. I'm going to say that back. And if you know XSL2E, you know that I've just essentially ruined those 4 files. Now, if I want to get them back, I can restore from a snapshot, another new feature we've added here. So I can right mouse click this, and I can select Restore from Snapshot. And what it will do in this case is it will look up the history of the file and say, I won't present you all the snapshots you've ever made of this. Now, you might be thinking, well, I can do that with a checkpoint. Yes and no. Yes, a checkpoint is good for creating a checkpoint of an entire domain and not an individual file or an individual object. Might be preferable in your book, but there's a limit, a hard limit to the number of checkpoints you can make of a file, object, or domain. In DataPower, we don't have that problem here. So when I select this file, a number of things happen that's very important. One, it shows you all the historical backups that have been made of that file. It takes a list of those, and as you select them, it's kind of hard to tell because all the samples in our lab are identical. But the idea here is I've got all the snapshots that I made of this file, and I can select one, and I can restore from the snapshot. Now, one thing to point out is DPAA will aggregate this list. So you might be thinking, well, you selected 4 of these things, and I'm only seeing 1 of these things. Well, what it's doing is it's taking this name and it's making it unique here. And then you can select the restoration from any given appliance from which you made a snapshot. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have snapshots from those appliances for every given day. You can see here that I have a snapshot from this appliance on this day, and I have a snapshot of this appliance on this day. But then I have a snapshot of this appliance on this day and a different appliance on this day. So you can select, and as you select them, again, it's difficult to tell because the files are identical, but you can see the content of the file as you're looking at it, and you can quickly see what that file looks like. So if I decide to restore to this version of this file, then I can select Next, and I can say, okay, I want to restore this file from that's the snapshot that was dated on that date. So you can see that in all 4 of the appliances, I'm restoring this file to the snapshot on these dates, and you can see the snapshot file that we're restoring from. And if I make a mistake, I can go back. I can always cancel this, and I can veto the restore. So I can say, you know what? I really don't want this appliance to be restored. I want that one left alone. Well, maybe we can take 2 of them and say we don't want them. Now, what you're saying here is when I select that and all these get checked, what's happening here is synchronized changes is on. In other words, the idea of synchronized changes throughout DPAA is the idea that if I'm changing one, I probably want to change them all. If I'm revoking one, I probably want to revoke them all. And that is based upon the name of the object and type of the object you're selecting. So in this case, because it's a file, if I say I want to restore it, then it's going to want to restore all of them. If I say I don't want to restore it, then it's going to not want to restore all of them of the same name. So if I want to individually select 2, I want to restore, and I just want to restore these 2, I can turn that checkbox off, select them individually, and then I can select Finish, and I can restore just the ones I want to restore back to an original date. So it's very convenient that we can do that quickly and get the restoration back to a previous point. Now, again, you saw 4. If I had done 10 snapshots of this file throughout time, you would get the opportunity to go as far back in time as you want to. Again, in DataPower, you have a strict limit of the number of checkpoints you can create. In DPAA, you don't in the snapshot feature. So that's another nice thing. The same thing applies to objects. If I select a set of objects, I could snap me up with objects, which we already did. And if I want to, let's go make a change to this crypto profile real quick. We'll modify this crypto profile to try to give an idea. I didn't make a snapshot of the files, which is why you didn't see one of the current date, but I did make a snapshot of these objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go just change this to medium. I'm just going to change it to medium only. And again, if you haven't seen this before, the synchronized changes made that change all the way across the board. So I'm going to say that. And I'm going to say, okay, I've made this change across the board. And let's suppose that now, and we can see that these are modified, and I have a number of ways to get it back. But right now we're focusing on snapshots. So some change has been made. We can see that it's modified. And this, it's not working, right? There's a number of courses that are available, of actions that are available to us. But what we want to do is demonstrate restoring the snapshot. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to select all 4 of them. Now, again, I don't have to select objects of the same type in this action. I don't have to select object of the same type to snapshot them or restore them. But in this particular case, I'm giving you the demonstration of one particular one that we made a modification to. I'm going to right mouse click again, and I'm going to select Restore from Snapshot. Because I snapshotted these objects earlier, you'll be able to see that we have files dated all the way to a current date of a snapshot whenever we made the snapshot of that object. And so what's happening is we have the crypto profile. Again, it's aggregated that crypto profile across the board. And I see the configuration of that on that date. Now, again, as I go through, you can see the differences here. You see that we've got this one that we recently made. We got this one, and we got some other ones, but you can see that they'll change throughout time. So as I select them, it's actually showing you what that configuration was on that date, which is pretty nice to be able to do. So if I want to restore these back to a time when this was the cipher string, then I can select one that matches that, and I can select next. And again, like in the final situation, I had the ability to revoke any one I want to. And again, we're not limited to the same type or name of object in here, but in this example, we're just focusing on one. We do want to restore them all in general. If I select Finish, we've successfully restored those back to the previous period in time. If I run this again, you're going to see, oh, it's not modified anymore. Well, that's because I changed it right back to the way it was. And if I open the selected objects now, you'll be able to see that it no longer says just medium. It's back to this previous string that we had in there, or cipher string that we had in there, and restored from that arbitrary a snapshot date that we had created for that object. So that's the one new feature. We can create both snapshots, and we can restore from snapshots as we see fit anytime we want to, and that's one of the neat features that we've added to the tool. The next thing that we've added to the tool is what we call status alerting. If you're familiar with the status screen, you can monitor status providers like we're doing here. You can select any status provider and start it up and look at the status that we have available to us. Now, I'm going to show this example via memory status 2 here. And let me take this out for just a second just to give you an idea what memory status looks like. If I now hit the search button, I see the memory status of those appliances. And because I have an update frequency turned on every 2 seconds, it's updating that. And I can watch this, and this is pretty cool. I'm going to stop this for a second. Now we can put in there an expression, and when you type an expression in, you just type the heading that you see on the screen, and then you can type an equal sign, and here you can type a regular expression that you can match against. And this little help button will let you know that what you can enter. That's a matter of a different video, but if you haven't seen status providers before, you can do this sort of thing. So now, if I start to search for this and I look at it, we'll see I only get the ones that are matching where usage is equal to 33, which is very convenient for us because it may be something that we want to look for in this case and want to say, okay, when it reaches that, I want to see it. We've added a new feature here. It's called alerting. There's a new button on the screen that hasn't been here before, and it's this bell, and right now alerting is turned off. So we're not alerting on this. All we're doing is filtering on this. The alerting mode has 3 different modes. No alerting at all, which is the mode we're in now. If I select the alert button now, I go into alerting only. Now this means we're alert only, and so what we're going to see is we're going to see all the memory status. So you can see I don't have just 33 here anymore. I have 27, 32, 33, whatever. But the things that are showing up in the alert part of the window now are what was previously showing up only in the filter area. So the alerting is alerting to us every time this comes up. Now, The cool thing about alerting is that if I'm not on the screen and I'm over here working, notice how the status tab is red now. That means at least one alert has shown up. And if I go back with this tab, you'll be able to see that among my running status providers, I've got a red bell here. And that means that this is the one that's alerting. Now, this one is actively running back here. There are no alerts turned on, but this one is actively running. But this one but there are no alerts. But this one is running with an alert, and you can tell that that alert is on, and that has indicated that there's something in this table. Another mode we have is alert and filtering. So when I turn this mode on, it'll take a little while for you to notice this, but as it goes down, you'll notice that up at the top here, you're only seeing 33 show up, which is what we're filtering on. So we're filtering and alerting. So again, we can do that. If I'm on another tab over here, this tab is still red, which indicates to me that I've got both alerts and filters going on here, or some kind of alert going on. And that's another mode that we have. And then at any time, you can click it one more time and you go back to no alerting. You lose the alert table. If I'm not on that tab, notice that the status tab is no longer red, which means we're not trying to alert ourselves on anything. And you also see that I just got the little running man indicator that we're running these, but we're not alerting on them at this point. Now, this was kind of a contrived example because I wanted to show you active alerting that's going on here, but a better use case of alerting would be in the case of this screen here, where I've got the query up here that says, okay, I'm going to look for the name of the network interface, and we're going to call it Ethernet 0, and we're going to look for the an error state of 0 or more. So if I start this up at this point, I'm looking for Ethernet 0 with alerting and filtering on, but what we're seeing here is that every 10 seconds it's going to update. But what we're going to see here is that very rarely are you going to see this condition exist where errors, it's not 0. That's a regular expression for not 0. So in this particular case, errors are not going to be 0. If errors become or not 0, then we'll get an alert. And you can understand now that after some period of time, if this shows up and you're working over here in the files area, or you're working with object, or you're doing some kind of administrative task, then you can quickly see that, oh, if one of those alerts, if that alert fires, then we're going to get this tab. It's going to turn red right in front of our face, and we'll be able to go back here and quickly see that we have an alert that triggered, and we'll see the data in this table. And in this case, since we're alerting and filtering, we'd see it in both, but it just depends on the mode you're running in. And then you would see also the red bell here and not necessarily the red bell there, depending on how we may be running these status providers. So status alerting on any status provider, it works with filtering. You have to have a filter in order to alert. But if you're in alert mode only, which is this mode with the bell selected, then we should see all the data for the status provider here. So we're seeing all the data, but when the alert happens is only going to be when the data matches that particular filter when we're alert only mode. So alerting is kind of like you're going to swap between these modes to be able to get to the alerts you want to see. So that's very convenient because, like I said, if you're running one and you didn't have we didn't have alerting before, if you're working well, you got to remember to come back to here and check again and look to see if something matched. And before, since it was just filtering, it could have gone past the list. See, I'm only showing 50 rows at a time. If I work for it out and they say, oh yeah, I got to update my status, you wouldn't have known. But the beauty of the alerting is when you got alerts on, you had this table. This table doesn't empty out. This may be limited to 50, but this table doesn't empty out. And then what ends up happening is we get the table of alerts, and then you can see when they're happening and how often they're happening and that sort of thing. So you can leave this running for long periods of time, work anywhere else in the tool you want to work. And then when this time's drag, you can come back and see which status provider is actually alerting to you. So those are the two new features we added to this version of the software. If you want to make other suggestions or other comments or suggestions, or you want to get a license, go to www.kumbasoft.com and we go to the features and tutorials to see the thousands of features we have in this tool, and go to the Contact Us page to give us your information, make your suggestions, request your license. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.